Marhaban! My name is Ian Campbell, and this series of 6 videos is the third series in a whole set of videos explaining the basics of how to speak, read, and write Al-Fusha, or Modern Standard Arabic. These 6 videos will explore how to create simple sentences. This is much more complicated in Arabic than in English, mostly because Arabic lacks capital letters and helper words like is or a or an. This second video will give an overview of the subjects of sentences and the different kinds of subjects you will see. So let's begin with the vocabulary word al-mubtada. Al-mubtada means the starting point. Its 3-letter root here is ba, and then dal, and then hamza. Remember, hamza can be a root letter, but alif cannot. And it's very common to have meme as a prefix, and it's very common to have an infixed ta in between the first and second root letters. We call this form 8. And so this is the ba, dal, hamza root is to begin, and the mubtada is the starting point, what we would call the subject of the sentence in English. And one way in which Arabic is a little bit different from English is that the subject needs to be definite if it comes first in the sentence. And what happens when we have an indefinite subject is something I'll take up in a later video in this series once I get a couple of other things in place that will help make it make sense for you. So we're going to stick to definite subjects today. So the mubtada, the starting point, is what we're talking about, the noun or pronoun that we're about to give information for. And mostly this is pretty easy and simple to deal with. So this is definitely the easiest part of this series of videos. And I'll be explaining the different types of mubtadas that you'll see. So the most common sort of mubtada is a definite noun or noun adjective phrase, and this is best done through examples. So we have at-talib, a definite noun, the student. Ar-rajul at-tawil, an ism sifa or noun adjective phrase, the tall man. We're really saying the man, the tall. And then we have 3 words here which are all definite. Al-mar'a, the woman, al-qasira, short, at-tunsiya, Tunisian. So these are all examples of mubtadas. None of them is a sentence here. These are just the starting points of sentences. We could say, at-talib jadid, the student is new. Ar-rajul at-tawil, latif, the tall man is nice, and so forth. But these are just the beginnings of sentences. So definite nouns or noun adjective phrases is the most common sort you'll see here. It's also pretty common to use a demonstrative, this, that, these, or those, or demonstrative phrase as a mubtada. For example, hadha. Hadha means this for masculine singular. And it could be a subject of a sentence all by itself. This, what about it? Is a zamil. And zamil is a new word here. A zamil is a great word. Zamil could be classmate, colleague, housemate, somebody that you share a lot of things with but isn't necessarily a friend. So learn this word, zamil. So hadha is our demonstrative, this, and then an indefinite noun. So we know that this means this is a classmate. So here, the mubtada of this sentence is just hadha by itself. And we do this all the time in English. This is a classmate. And then we move from definite, because remember, pronouns and demonstratives are always considered definite for this purpose, to indefinite. And that's what makes it a sentence. Over here, we have tilka, those, or this, or that, rather. A zamila, here's a female classmate, and we're going to describe her. She's latifa, she's nice. So all 3 of these words are definite, so this is an ism sifa, a phrase, not a sentence. That nice classmate. And over here, we have the human plural for hadha, which is haula. It's a little bit of a mouthful to learn to say at first. Haula. And then zumala is the human plural of zamil. You could say zamilun. Everyone would understand you. And you'd gradually fill it in with, oh, it's zumala instead, because lots of common nouns have irregular human plurals. And what kind of classmates are they? Al-Jazair, literally the islands, is the name for Algeria because it's originally named after the capital city, which has a bunch of islands in the harbor. And then we're going to turn Jazair into Jazairi to make it Algerian. And then we're going to add the safe human plural ending una to make it human plural. So هؤلاء الزملاء الجزائريون, these Algerian classmates. Kind of a mouthful in Arabic. But then we'd go on and say something about them. So whether the demonstrative is just by itself or is part of a noun adjective phrase, these are very, very common types of mubtadas for sentences. And you'll see these all of the time. Same thing goes with pronouns, and remember that both demonstratives and pronouns always count as definite for this purpose. So we could say huwa talib. So huwa, because it's a pronoun, is definite, and then talib is indefinite. So he, a student, and of course we mean he is a student. Hum is our human plural they. Tulab is the irregular plural of talib. You could say talibun, everyone would understand you. And then judud is the human plural of the adjective jadid. And if you said jadidun, everyone would understand you. So hum tulab judud, yani, they are new classmates. And you'll hear me say yani a lot. Yani means it means. And it's also what you say when you can't think of what to say next. Like you'd say or like in English, you say yani in Arabic. So you'll hear me say this in the background all the time when I momentarily forget what I'm about to say. Kutub are books. Kutub is non-human plural, so we have to treat it as feminine singular. So we have to say hiya. In English, we would say they because books are plural. But in Arabic, we have to say she. I've gone over this before, but I'll go over it again and again and again because it is one of the most confusing parts about basic Arabic. So hiya kutub qadima. They are old books. In Arabic, we have to say she is old books. And then here's a new word, hunna. And hunna is hum, human plural they, when the group is made up entirely of women. Not used a lot in everyday language, but I wanted a human female plural example here, so I'll give you the pronoun for it, and you can learn this. Hunna is hum for all women. So hunna talibat. In English, we just say they are students, but in Arabic, we specify the gender. If we needed to specify the gender in Arabic, we'd have to say something like they are female students or they are women students. But in Arabic, we don't bother, or in Arabic, we do this, and in English, we usually don't bother. So hunna is a new word for you, and I'll typically give you new words in blue. Now I'm thinking I should have put zamil in blue, but ma'alesh. Ma'alesh, another great word. Stuff happens. Things are imperfect. Deal with it. So hunna talibat, they are students. So pronouns are always definite, so they're really good candidates for mubtadas, and we begin them with sentences all the time, both in Arabic and in English. And then there's this oddball little rule that sometimes you'll see both a definite subject and a pronoun, and that's because the second half of the subject is definite, and that's actually imprecise. What I mean, the second half of the sentence begins with alif lam is what it really ought to say. So here's a couple of examples of this. So ذلك الرجل, that man. So this is definite because it's a demonstrative. This is definite because it's alif lam. And we want to say that he's the professor, not a professor. So because the second half of the sentence begins with alif lam, we need this pronoun in here to separate them. So ذلك الرجل هو الأستاذ. That man, he is the professor, is literally what we're saying. But in English, we would just say, that man is the professor. We can make it human plural. We can say, هؤلاء الشباب, these young people, these guys. Hum, our human plural pronoun, because the second half of the sentence begins with alif lam. At-tulab al-judud, the new students. So the hum here is kind of serving as the is, am, are in this case, because the second half of the sentence begins with alif lam. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in the next video as well, just to be perfectly clear about it. But I'm just kind of giving this example here of when you'll see both a definite subject, a definite mubtada, and a pronoun. So there are more ways to make a noun definite than just adding alif lam. We can have nouns with possessive suffixes, we can have proper nouns, and then later on we'll talk about nouns that are owned by other nouns, and they count as definite as well, but they won't really cause a problem for these sorts of sentences. So we can say zamili, Now, Zamil is classmate, so Zamili is my classmate. It doesn't begin with alif lam, so it isn't immediately perceived by most people as definite, especially if you're real new to Arabic. So you have to watch out for these possessive suffixes, because possessive suffixes make the noun definite, and you're not allowed to put alif lam. Well, I'm sure you're allowed to, it just looks silly to put alif lam on it. It makes it like too definite. So you can't say az-zamili, it's just too definite. It's either az-zamil or zamili. So my classmate, so this word is definite, and then we have shab toyib. It looks like tib, but it's not, it's toyib. And toyib means a good person. Toyib is a great word. It can mean like okay, like answering somebody. It can mean delicious or tasty. It can mean good character. It has a great number of uses. So zamili, definite because of the damir, the pronoun. Shab, indefinite. That's what makes it a sentence here. So my classmate is a good guy. By the same token, you can use the kaf on the end to make it your. So sadiqatuk. Now what happened here? Sadiq is friend, but sadiqa is female friend. And remember, ta marbuta can only be the last letter in a word. So if we are going to put a possessive suffix on the end of it, ta marbuta is of course tied up ta, so we're going to untie it and make it regular ta. So get used to seeing this ta before a domir, before a possessive pronoun. So sadiqatuk, your friend. In Arabic, we know that your friend is a woman. In English, we wouldn't necessarily know that until we got to the second half of the sentence. Fatat latifa, a nice gal. And again, I'm going with the old school World War II style here, gal, just to make these sentences a little shorter in English. You could say ukht, ukht is sister, ukhtuha, and why there's a dhamma up here is, I'm not even going to get into that. There's a reason for it, but it doesn't really matter for your purpose. If you said uktha instead of ukhtuha, if you said sadiqatuk instead of sadiqatuk, everyone would understand exactly what you meant, so don't worry about it. This is what we call a case marking, and I'll talk about this in a very, very later set of videos. So ukhtuha, her sister, so the ha at the end, the her, makes this word definite. We can't say al-ukhtuha because it's too definite. Then we're going to say zamilati. So I've made her my zamila. And again, I've untied the ta marbuta here to change zamila into zamilati, my classmate. And then I'm going to describe her. Jadid is new. Since she is a woman, I have to make the adjective feminine by adding ta marbuta. Since the noun is definite, I have to make the adjective definite, and the only way I could do that is by adding alif lam here. So, ukhtuha zamilati al-jadida, her sister, what about her, is my new classmate. And I've stopped putting the is in brackets here, because by now you should realize that we have to kind of place the is there. Let's look at a couple other of examples. So, it's easier to tell when you have an adjective on the initial noun because the adjective is going to have alif lam on it most of the time. So zumala'i, my classmates, al-judud, my new classmates. Now we go, because this word is definite bisabab ad-damir because of the pronoun. This word is mu'arraf bisabab alif lam. And then we get to ghair mu'arraf, indefinite. So shabab is the plural of shab. Tayyibun, it's a regular plural, is the plural of tayyib. And now we're going to introduce a new word, jiddan. So jid means serious, not like the star, but S-E-R-I-O-U-S, serious. And then we're going to add the tanween al-fath ending to it, the double fatha that is pronounced n. And if the word doesn't end with ta marbuta or hamza, we have to add an extra unpronounced alif to it. This is a spelling hangover from Quranic days. So jid means serious, jiddan means seriously, and it's what we use in place of English very. So in English, we put very before the adjective, very good guys. In Arabic, we do it the exact opposite way, guys, good, very. So adverbs, this is an adverb, go after their adjectives, and they never change form for gender or number, and they never take alif lam. I'll give more examples of adverbs as we go on. But jiddan is the first one everybody learns because it's the most common one, and it just means very. So if we wanted to translate this sentence, we'd say, my classmates, the new, guys, good, very, or in better English, my new classmates are very good guys. So the word order goes kind of backwards from English here. This is pretty easy to get used to. Just remember jiddan and other adverbs I'll give you don't change for gender, number, or definiteness, and they go after their adjectives. So صديقتك المصرية, your Egyptian friend. Now this is easier to tell that this is the mubtada because the second word begins with alif lam here, even though the first one doesn't. So the reason for this is صديقتك is definite because it has the damir on it. So we have to make its adjective, Masriya, Egyptian, definite by adding alif lam. And then we go to غير مؤرف, indefinite, and get fatat latifa jiddan. So I actually misspelled this up here. Now that I think about it, give me 1 second, and I will fix it. She is a very nice gal. And now it's correct. So sometimes I make mistakes when I translate things because I'm so used to doing it in my head. So fatat latifa jiddan. And this is how you'll see jiddan written most of the time. Just jim dal alif. So you won't see the tanween al-fath most of the time. And so this looks like jada, but it's not. It's jiddan. And this alif here is because there is a tanween al-fath. And it goes way, way back to the early history of Arabic being a written language. And we just have to roll with it. We'll see unpronounced alifs at the end of the word a fair amount of times, and it can mean it's an adverb, or it can also mean it's the object of a verb, but that's something I'll get into later on. This works with proper names as well. So Mahmud is a man's name, so Mahmud is definite because it's a proper noun. Sheb, Karim. And so now we go to غير مؤرف, or indefinite. He's a Karim guy. Probably the most precise translation is generous, maybe more like hospitable, and it's one of the chief virtues in Arabic cultures. Mahmud is a guy who is absolutely going to buy you a round of drinks. That's how he makes himself perceived as a good person and a good friend in a way that doesn't necessarily always translate culturally very well into English. So Mahmud is a generous, noble, hospitable guy. He's Karim, and Karim is a good thing to be. Karim could also be a man's name, and that's the trouble with Arabic, is that a lot of people's first names are words that mean something in the everyday language. For example, Iman. Iman is a very common woman's name, but Iman means faith. And of course, you probably met somebody or heard of somebody named Faith in English, but you'd have a capital F there, and so you'd be clear that it was somebody's name. But it's not always in Arabic, and you can make the most ridiculous mistranslations of sentences at first by not realizing that this is intended to be someone's first name and not just the regular word. So this happened to me all the time when I was a beginning learner, having to go back and be like, oh, Faith is Faith is her name. Okay, there we go. So Iman is her name, so because it's her name, it's definite. And then Fatat Dhakia, a smart gal. Baghdad, because it's the name of a city, it's a proper name, and it's not Baghdad like you'll hear in English, but Baghdad with the accent on the second syllable. And then it's a Medina, a city. Medina is feminine, so Kabira has to be feminine, and then Jiddan doesn't change for gender or number. We just put it after Kabira. So Baghdad, Medina, Kabira, Jiddan. Baghdad is a very big city. So none of this is truly rocket science, but it's useful to have it all laid out here, that you can begin with nouns or noun adjective phrases, you can begin with demonstratives or demonstrative phrases, you can begin with pronouns. Sometimes you'll have both a noun adjective phrase and a pronoun, and then you've got to look out for the possessive suffix because it makes the noun definite without adding alif lam. You've got to recognize names, especially when the names are everyday words in the language, and that can be kind of a challenge. Capital letters are wonderful things, and I kind of wish Arabic had them, but for now, that's pretty much it. In English, we often begin sentences with indefinite nouns, like a man is in the office. But in order to do this in Arabic, we've got to reword the whole sentence, and I'm going to take that up at a later date, because for